my dang car is dead, and or has been stalling out, and or has electrical issues. Often the resulting problems of these that I just listed very educationally is due to a bad alternator. So let's replace that today, and you'll be surprised, it's real easy. Well, despite the terrible fortune of our car breaking down, we have great fortune. I just happen to have the correct alternator for a Jeep JK 2007, the one I'll be working on. This has the 3.8 liter V6. 2012 they got the 3.6 liter V6 Pentastar or something like that. Very similar job for all of the JK, JKU. Don't know about JLs, which are the new things, and the Gladiators, who knows, probably a nightmare, wouldn't even try it. But it's very complicated to do this one. It takes 3 sockets, a 10, 13, and a 16 millimeter socket, a 1/4 inch wrench, and that's it. Yeah, no, pretty straightforward. So let's get cracking. Take the old one out and we can put this new one in. First things first, you pop the hood on your Jeep Cherokee, and that's the rubber boats on both sides, and then you reach in the center just above the word Jeep, and you actuate this little hook, and then you can either put that into place or lean your hood all the way back on your windshield. I recommend putting a blanket down before you lean it all the way back, whatever your preference. Now let's get on closer. Now with your car off, you'll take your 10 millimeter socket, put it on the positive, crank it a little loose, and then pull it off of there. And now there's no electrical current going through your car, and we are ready. Now taking your socket or your wrench with no socket on it, fit it neatly into your tensioner, pulling down with one hand, and just slide your belt off of the tensioner. And now give yourself a little bit of slack, and you can pop it right off the alternator. And you're going to want to try and remember or take a picture of where it all routed through, because once you take the tension off, it is going to start falling off of everything. Now with the 13 millimeter socket, you take off this support bracket. Now you don't need, but it's easier with a deep socket 13 mil just to loosen this nut in the rear that's holding the same bracket we just loosened, and take this nut off so we can remove the bracket. The bracket is impeding the egress and entrance of the old and new alternators. Now we have this bracket clear. There's a cable right here you're going to lift off. That's also a 13 millimeter, and this is what comes from your positive part of your battery. And removing this is the last feed of electricity. So you do want to be careful here, maybe wear rubber gloves or make sure it's grounded all the power out. Now just lay this off to the side, and be sure to keep track of the bolts and nuts as you take them off as to where they go. Now there's only 2 bolts holding the alternator on still, and that will be the 16 millimeter bolts, as you can see here. Oh yeah. Now that's a tight one. And now we remove the other bolt. Now you might want to climb up onto your car to get some leverage, put some weight on it. Now I don't recommend or like using pneumatic or electric drills or drivers or torque guns when I'm working in the engine bay, because that's how you break a bolt. And if you've ever broken a bolt inside of a bracket, shout out Hugo, it is super annoying and hard to fix. So I don't recommend it. Just use hand tools. Sometimes you gotta find weird angles. And now the very last thing we remove is this little red safety clip, and just pop the retainer clip backwards away from the alternator. And alright, use a tool, use a little leverage. This red safety pin pulls back, and then this pin pulls off, and thanks to leverage, we have this bad boy out. Take this back to wherever you bought the old one, return it for a core charge, which, you know, it could be a couple dozen bucks or more, depending on the market. Copper these days, you could probably sell just that alone for $20 trillion. So, throw this to the side. Let's go get the new one. Alright, this is our new alternator. Now, you're going to want to just make sure, before you start putting it in, that it matches. Please call an ASE certified technician. Never mind. We are ASE certified. ASE is American Smart Educational System, and we definitely have a good one of those. So, this is the matching alternator, is something we would like to figure out. So, yes, mine is matching. Compare yours to the old one to make sure it is before you start installing it, because that would be terrible if it didn't install correctly. Now, honestly, you can turn the video off. You don't need to watch any further. It is all just plug everything you just took off back in. Super easy peasy. I believe in you. You can do it. Now, just climb up on top of your car here. Line up the double and the single. Take the long bolt, goes on the right. Yeah. Just wiggle it into place by hand before you start putting everything in. And then remember the washer on the shorter one on your left or passenger side. Goes right in there. And you're gonna want to save the bracket for last just because it kind of gets in your way. But the curve goes towards the engine block, and the flatter end goes onto the alternator. There was a nut on the bracket on the engine side. There's a bolt on the alternator side. There's a nut on the power cable from the battery to the alternator right here. That goes under this black cap. And there's this wire here that you have the red side going towards the cab or towards the rear of the vehicle. You push it in till you hear a click, and then you push the red click, or push the red cap till you hear a click as well. And then you start tightening everything back down. I will display the proper torque specs on the screen, or maybe I won't. Find out. Oh, super tight. Now that we've got all our bolts and everything tightened back up, you want to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, yes, I am talking to the GoPro. And then you've got 2 connections, the red cable from the battery and the multi-port red, you know, whatever thingy on the right side. Now you take the socket off, and in the same way that we took the tension off, the tensioner, we're going to take the tension off, and this is easier with 2 people. 1 person, tensions down to that first hole.
Grooves in the serpentine first.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Good?
Yeah.
Good? Yeah. I think we're on.
My finger's gonna get pinched.
Nope, I'm good. Now there's a flat side, and that goes on all of the, like such as the tensioner is flat, but these ridges are what you want to pay attention to and make sure each one of the sockets that supports them, it is properly in there, or else you will burn your belt out when you start your car up, and that is bad. Don't want to do that. Now, if your belt moves more than about 1/8 to 1/4 inch, it's a bit too loose, and if it doesn't move at all, it's too tight. So you're going to want to take another 16mm socket, and then you can use the same wrench, but a longer wrench will be easier, and you want to tighten or loosen the bolt that is holding the tensioner, the same tensioner that we slipped the serpentine belt off of earlier. Now just push down to tighten it, to loosen it if it's too tight. You know, reverse your wrench, pull up, and pulling up will loosen it. So there you go. Ours is right between 1/8 and 1/4 inch on this longer stretch here. General rule of thumb is if it's got a foot of length and it can move in that 1/8 to 1/4, that's perfect. And now that we have the belt back on, all the bolts and all the sockets ready to go, be sure to cover them back up. Now when reinstalling your battery, I highly recommend going to, where'd you go? Napa, same place as the battery and the alternator. That would make sense. That would make sense. I don't know why I didn't just guess that. And get replacement terminals. That will really help the conductivity of your vehicle. charge your battery and get power out to your alternator, your sound system, all your stuff. Also, pick up a little battery terminal protection spray. It's anti-corrosive and it'll help keep that stuff fresh long term. Now with everything reinstalled, double, triple checked, and you may have a dead battery if your alternator was dead, so you'll want to take that to a store, have them trickle charge it, or you can buy a trickle charger, or you can jump it from another vehicle. But let's make sure. Now that sounds good. A bad alternator, you can hear it whine, the copper, the metal parts, that right in here would make that terrible whining sound. This is sounding so much better. You shouldn't hear anything from your alternator. That means the project's done. This car's ready to go. So, thanks for coming along. Remember, like, subscribe, comment, follow me on Instagram at SomeGuy Instapage. And if some guy can do it, so can you. That kind of hurt a little bit.